Hello, this is Ed from 18mm. Very quick video showing you a Super 8 camera called the Nikon R10, which was made late 70s, early 80s. So it's a Super 8 camera and it accepts the Super 8 film in this film compartment here. You insert the cartridge into there, and the cartridge has notching on it, which tells the camera the ISO or the ASA or speed of the film, i.e. how reactive it is to light. So when you put the cartridge in, the camera automatically knows what ISO the particular cartridge is. So you don't need to set that on the camera, that was automatically set. The camera has filming speeds of 54, 24 and 18 frames per second, which can be set using this dial here. And it also has a single frame exposure setting there for animation type filming. On the side here also, you can set the camera to over or underexpose. So if you wanted to play around with your exposure settings, you could consistently over or underexpose using that dial there. The camera accepts 6 AA batteries, which are inserted in this fixed position handle here. You put the batteries in by unscrewing this thread here. You lift the plate off, and inside is a battery caddy, which you take out, put your batteries in. There is a diagram inside the caddy which shows you which way to put them round. You put the caddy back into the handle and put that plate back on, and then you've got the batteries in. The camera doesn't switch on and off as such. Once the battery is in, the camera's on, unless this isn't so much an on-off switch as it just locks the shutter release. So you've got a little lever here, which if you push it in, that locks the shutter release. If you push it out from the other side, a bit like changing the direction on a hand drill, that then allows for the shutter release to be depressed and you can start filming. This particular camera's got no batteries in, so you can't hear any motor whirring when I press that in. You've got on the rear of the camera rear focus control. This is basically so you can set the viewfinder to your eyesight. So everybody has slightly variable eyesight. The way to focus this to your eyesight is to look through the viewfinder with the lens cap off, and you'll basically see in the middle of the viewfinder a little split image focusing area, and along the top you'll see a range of numbers which are the f-stops or the aperture settings of the lens. Just look through and turn that knob there until the split imaging focusing area in the middle of the focusing screen is crystal clear, and also you can see the numbers as clearly as possible along the top. Those are the f-stops. On the other side of the camera, you've got a lot of controls which in these days of digital editing, there's really no need for them anymore. There is a double exposure setting. There is a fade in and fade out setting. That's that lever there. There is, you can change the shutter angle, which could be useful if you're doing action photography, say if you're filming a sporting event or someone running or a car going very fast. You can close the shutter angle down. But in most instances, you're going to want the shutter angle fully open. An important thing to make sure of before you start filming is that the shutter angle is fully open. And to do this, this knob depresses in and you turn it, as I look at it, clockwise to fully open the shutter angle. You'll know the shutter angle is fully open because looking through the viewfinder, down the right-hand side of the viewfinder is a red bar. Or if the shutter angle is slightly closed or fully closed, that red bar will be fully descended. To make sure that the shutter angle is fully open, push this lever in, or knob rather, turn it clockwise, looking through the viewfinder, make sure that that red bar is fully ascended so that there is no red bar there. And that will then mean that the shutter angle is fully open and you're getting the most light hitting the film. So that's an important thing. Just, you know, you may be picking this up second hand or off eBay, or you may be renting the camera. yeah, it's really worth just making sure before you film that the shutter angle is where you want it to be. So no red bar means the shutter angle is fully open, the most amount of light is hitting the film. If there's any red bar there, push that knob in, turn it clockwise as you're looking at it until that red bar has fully ascended. On the side here is also a rewind and forward wind for the motor. That was put there so that you could rewind the film to do backward filming, or you could rewind the film to do a lap dissolve, which was when you fade one scene into another. Again, because we're all digital editing these days, well, I mean, that stuff can be done in a second in Adobe Premiere. So you're really not going to need to use that. So just make sure that that knob there, or that lever, is pressed down in forward mode, FOW. Likewise, this lever here was for double exposure or lap dissolve. You don't need to concern yourself with that. Just make sure that that lever there is pushed down on DE, double exposure. But it's not going to be doing a double exposure because you're not rewinding the film. But just align all of these levers here basically on the white abbreviations. This is a fade in and fade out paddle. I wouldn't bother using it. You can basically fade your scene out, or you can fade your scene in by pushing it up or down. Again, that can be done in digital editing. Just leave that parallel. So really on this side, the only thing you want to concern yourself with is the shutter angle and just making sure that's where you want it to be. And if you've got the shutter angle slightly closed, you need to understand you've then got to compensate by adding more light through your exposure. So through your f-stops basically. Which moves us on to this knob here. This is so that you can put the camera into manual or fixed exposure. So the way these cameras work is, as you point them at a scene, it will select, and you'll see it through the top of the viewfinder, it will select the appropriate f-stop that it thinks is right for that scene. However, if you're moving the camera around and the lighting conditions change, that can cause the diaphragm or the aperture to open and close, which can sometimes be not that nice. So to compensate for that, you can point the camera at your subject, obtain the optimal f-stop for that particular scene, and by pulling this knob out, you can then lock the f-stop on, or lock the aperture rather, on that f-stop. You will see the f-stops through the viewfinder, arranged along the top of the viewfinder, and I believe they go from 1.4 through to 22. So 1.4 being your most open, and 22 being the most closed aperture. In the same way, when you pull this out, you can also move the f-stops, open or closed, just by turning this knob forward and backwards. So you'll see the f-stops changing along the top of the viewfinder when you've got that knob pulled out and you're turning that forwards and backwards. To put it back into fully automatic mode, just push that button straight back in. You've got a switch here which allows you to do fast or slow power zooming, and your power zooming is done using these paddles here. So power zooming was, because this was made in the late 70s, early 80s, it was pretty cool to have a servo that did your zooming for you. It's really not that cool anymore. It doesn't look very nice unless you want to achieve like a really old-fashioned home movie look. I find it much more efficient to just use the manual zooming here on the zooming ring at the back of the lens. Shutter release is there, which I think I've already mentioned. One last thing, you do have both normal focusing on this lens, which goes from 5 foot through to infinity. To focus, you basically zoom directly in on your subject, fully zoomed, focus until the split imaging looks as optimal as possible. In other words, the two images converge in the central portion of the viewfinder, and then zoom out to your desired focal length. There is also, though, macro focusing on this lens, which is pretty hidden actually, unless you know what you're looking for. To put it into macro mode, put the lens on infinity and using the zoom ring at the back of the lens, just push it forward like that. And you'll see the numbers on the zoom ring go from white to red, which means it's in macro mode. This means then that you can focus using the zoom lever from, I believe, 170 millimeters, probably through to about 4 foot. It's pretty simple. When it's in macro mode, you're only going to be focusing on stuff really close up, and you look through the viewfinder and you don't use the focus ring on the front, you just use the zoom lever on the back in macro mode to get focus on your close-up subject. Remember though, when you want to go back to normal filming, i.e. from 5 foot through to infinity, remember to put that back into normal mode. Otherwise, you're going to get really freaked out by the fact that everything looks really poorly focused. So to put it back into normal mode, just push that back and you'll see the white numbers. That then is in normal focus mode. And I believe that's about it. It's a really, really nice camera. It's got a superb lens on it. It would have classed as a professional Super 8 camera back in the day. And I found them to be very solidly built and really quite reliable, given that they're now 40 plus years old. So hopefully if you're renting one of these cameras from us, you'll enjoy using it. Of course, if you have any problems or you have any questions, do get in touch. All right, we'll speak soon. Bye.